Testing, testing, testing. Good morning, everyone. In about 5 minutes, we'll be starting parables. So make your way. There's donuts in the gathering space and coffee. So grab a donut. For reals, there's donuts. Test, test, test. Test, test, test. How's it going? Excuse me? Say again? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. I said, do you hear it again? Yes. You'll find out. Okay, everybody out in the gathering space, make your way towards the sanctuary for parables. We're excited. It's beginning to look a lot like Advent. I won't follow it, but sure.
I can hope. This is my exercise of hope. I'm working with you to continue to give me things.
Is an exercise in
Yep.
futility. That is all you get. Oh, maybe you get some more.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
I got a little more. Hi, y'all. So we've been doing this parables thing for almost 3 months now. Can you believe it? Yeah, and we've heard from some really interesting people, and we'll continue to have those interviews that we prepare for, and we invite specific people to tell some stories. We have Pat Kiefer coming up actually in a couple weeks, so I'm really excited about that. And of course, next week's going to look a little different because we'll have Santa Claus here, and it's basically going to be a big party. But we're sticking
Chaos.
the best kind of chaos. But we're sticking with the themes of Advent. So last week we heard from the Tallies, Johnny and Laura, about hope, about, what is that squeaking? Oh, it's the chair. I was like, what? Sorry, Carol. I didn't mean to call you out. I was just like, is something breaking up here?
But did you?
I did call her out, but I didn't mean to. So we talked about this theme of hope, and how your hope in Jesus leads you to serve in specific ways to connect others with what God is doing in the world. And so now we're turning to this theme of love. And as Stuart and I were talking about this weeks ago, we thought, what about having a conversation about love with everybody here? What if you all tell your parables, your stories, as you feel led to do so? And we do have some questions. We've prepared for the conversation, but it's going to be a bit more open, and that you all are the ones who are going to be speaking. And of course, we have stories to share if nobody wants to talk.
So in answer to your question, Vern, all y'all are the guests this week.
Yeah. So remember, our theme is love. And what is love? Well, let's try that again. Not everybody caught it. And what is love? Not everybody caught it, Jason. Do it again. That's right. To love is to will the good of another, is to choose to will the good of another. So that's the definition that Thomas Aquinas gives us. So I'm going to start by asking you all, how do you define love? And if you would be willing to use the mic, that's great. If you're not mobile enough to get to the mic, we can bring the mic to you, and that's okay too. But just remember...
We can't. That's as far as mic goes.
Is it?
It is.
Okay. Well, we'll do the best we can. Maybe we could repeat some of the things that you're saying if you can't make it to the mic. But we are recording this to share with other people, so using the mic helps for that reason.
Well, we're actually live.
And we're live. Yes, but it will also be recorded.
But we're live.
He is intent on correcting everything I say this morning.
No, so let's start here.
Okay.
Okay, so you gave us this really lofty, attainable, but it is a lofty definition of love. Thomas Aquinas' definition of love. Mm-hmm. What is your personal definition of love? Besides, baby, don't hurt me.
I really like Thomas Aquinas' definition, and I try to apply that in a personal way, but if I was going to put that in my own words, I think to love is to think about what's best for others and to work toward that, just as Johnny was saying that was how you're processing that definition, right? And I think that's the way that I look at it. To love is to really work toward what is best. And that doesn't always mean that it's exactly what everyone wants. As I love my children, I work toward what is best for them. They don't always like that, right? But that's my role. So it doesn't mean that love is easy. It just means that we make it a priority to work toward what is best for others, including people we don't like. Yeah, tell us. Dale Yo, what is love? How do you define love?
I'm going to agree with you, but I think working toward what's best for others, including yourself.
Yes.
You can't let yourself be abused, or it's never going to work.
Absolutely. And so the commandment that comes from Jesus and the prophets is to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself, right? And so certainly in my definition of love, I'm not condoning putting up with abuse or unhealthy behaviors. Part of loving is setting up those healthy boundaries. Absolutely, Dale. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah. What else? What's love? Yeah. Eileen, come on up. Okay, well, tell us and we'll see if we can hear you.
Eileen, please. I know it's Las Cruces, New Mexico, but could you please use your New York City voice?
No, I think that's really, really beautiful. And I think many of us will have memories of Christmases, and maybe they weren't rich in the financial sense, right? But they warm our hearts when we think about them. So that's another thing that we could share today is that love expressed at Christmas time. So think about that. If you have a story like that you'd like to share. Yeah, yeah.
Favorite gift from my parents was a box of 64 crayons with a sharpener.
Yes!
The only one I remember, and lots of toys.
Yes!
My life, but that is the only one I
64 crayons and a sharpener. Yes!
I just want you to know that I am celebrating the 50th year that I have not gotten the 64 box of crayons. Yeah. My friend John Carr got a box, and I was really jealous, and I asked for it the next year and didn't get it. So.
Oh, okay. So who needs to buy Stuart a present this year? You just heard what Stuart needs for Christmas.
So for those of you online who didn't hear our New Yorker Eileen not using her, so she's been out of New York way too long. She didn't use her New York voice. She was saying that a mother finds a way to make Christmas happen regardless of the financial situation. So whether it's wrapping a gift in newspaper or making at least one cookie or doing something to make do. And then her favorite gift was a box of crayons, which
64.
I have yet to. Well, and it was also, the kicker was the sharpener.
In the back of the box, yeah.
It was the sharpener.
Yeah. It's timeless.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dale. No, it's okay. Go ahead. Do you have something,
think
Carter?
there's,
You're stretching.
different kinds of love. There's romantic type of love between people, and then there's kind of like the family love. And we were talking about, like families at Christmas. And I have memories of Christmas. My family was kind of split apart because my brother was older and worked, and my mother worked a lot. But we usually managed to spend part of Christmas together, and we'd go down and get a tree and we'd decorate, and she had us make decorations, and I remember we had special decorations because we had a cat that would ruin the tree. One time it
Right.
went up the tree and whatever, and we'd go downtown. This was in Minneapolis. We'd go downtown Minneapolis and look. In those days, the windows that were all decorated, the streets are decorated, and there was a big store called Dayton's, and we'd go up and see Santa Claus, and there was theme decorations all over the place. They don't do that much anymore, but those are part of good memories that aren't expensive, but that can be good for a family.
Yeah, and they helped you feel loved and connected. That's beautiful, Dale. Love lifted me. Yeah. Yeah, because we believe that God is love, right? And so that's right. That's right. That's right. It's good stuff. What else? How do you define love? Yeah, Steve. But the people online can't. If you could step up to the mic, it'd be helpful. Thanks.
For the last couple of weeks in our men's Bible study, we talked about hope.
Yeah.
And we got into another one of those both and situations. Hope is a thing that you wish for, and hope is a real thing. It's not an activity. I see it the same way in the word love. Love is a thing. And the scriptural part of that is do unto others as you would have them do to you. So the do part is, I think, what I struggle with
Yeah.
in terms of my loving Stuart, basically.
Well,
Wait. So Steve, you're right there, right? Wait, come back. We're gonna let the Stuart part. We're just gonna let that fall. So tell me, Steve Georgie. Tell me about that first moment that you saw Sue, and you knew, like, oh, there's something going on here called love.
This would probably come up later. I lived in California. The company I worked for was in Michigan. I had to go back for various training and things. When I went back, this training class. It's the one where you ask people questions, and based on their answers, you figure out what type of person they are. There's a name for it. Sue was first out of the box. She was in the marketing communications section. So she got to sit up there and sit around this U thing. And we were peppering questions at her. I was first asked the question. And the question I asked was, where did you get that tan? And then her answer was, I'll tell you later. And then the whole group went, oh, whoa.
Is that kind of right?
That was a moment of extreme like.
Aww.
I don't know as we both fell in love at that particular moment,
Yeah.
but that kind of. Does that help?
No, that's great.
Okay.
I see you. That's
And it
good.
was true. It was a true story, so I didn't make that one.
Well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart.
So we've all heard the story of Jason sitting in well, I try to forget all my memories of McMurray, whatever that building is, listening to you preach.
Yeah.
And then we kind of hear about the moment of, like, you showing up to watch a movie with him, realizing, like, oh, this is a date.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've all heard those stories, but we haven't heard about the moment where you're like, I kind of like this guy.
So I was thinking about that with your question about what is love, like how do you define it for yourself, and then with Steve's story. So Jason and I, we dated for a year before we were engaged, and I think there were different points where I was like, oh yeah, I think this could be something, and at that time he's like, this is going too fast, and then he would think, oh, I think we could get married. I'm like, this is going too fast. And so, there was this back and forth. But I think to answer your question, it wasn't in these big revelations. It was in these small moments. And we think about love, willing the good of another sometimes as being these grand things, but often it's in those tiny daily things that we find love in action. And this is my best example. It's so ordinary. But I love to read. And right now I'm really into the Louise Penny series about Three Pines. I'm a very slow reader because I only read about a chapter a week in a novel because I have kids and I have other things to read. So I think I'm on book 11 now. But when I'm near the end of the novel, the next one shows up. And that's because Jason never says a word. He's just watching the book get thinner. And when I get close to the end, he orders the next one, and it's there for me when I finish it. That's love, right? It's so ordinary, but he's observing and he's paying attention, and he's better at that than I am. But that's how I break down to will the good of another. You pay attention, and then you do those things without asking. I'm not very good at it, but I'm working on it.
Okay, well, I mean, we're at that time of year where everybody's in the hustle and bustle of gift giving, and so you're kind of admitting that you're actually kind of a good gift giver. She gave me a great birthday gift. It's not appropriate to talk about here right now. It was a coffee mug. It was a coffee mug.
You're going to start rumors.
It was a coffee mug. Okay, so I had a flask strapped to the coffee mug, but But anyways, what is it what's that pay attention moment that you do for Jason?
That's a great question.
And it's not on the list.
Well, why don't you let him answer that question? Hey, Jason, what's the pay attention thing that I do for you? I have an answer, but I wondered. Well, you might have a different perspective. So he gets to sleep in on Saturdays. He's tired. We're all tired. The kids are up at 4:30 in the morning sometimes, all three of them, like they were this morning.
I wonder why.
And I do not wake him up. So I think that's a gift. That's a gift of love. That's noticing that he's tired and he needs some sleep. You're welcome. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Fran, please.
I'm thinking about giving to others, people that you don't even know. That's love.
Yeah.
For many years, for almost 20 years, 20-something years, I worked at a boys' reform school, and this was back in the 80s, and that I'm talking about. While I was there, I worked at the boys' reform school. I was transferred temporarily to the girls' reform school as a substitute teacher. At that time, they had this cult in Oregon, where it was called the Ecclesia group. Anyway, there was a child that was beaten to death, and they took all of the kids that was in this cult. There were about 50 of them, and they didn't have any place to put them. And they put the boys in the boys. They were ranged from ages 4 to 16, and they put the boys at the boys' reform school, the girls at the girls' reform school, and I was selected as the teacher for these kids that had half of them had hardly even been to school. Anyway, to make a long story short, we had these kids, and I was talking about these kids that I had them for about 4 months, and I talked to my friends at church, and they said, well, let's give a Christmas party for these kids and tell us what we could get them, and they bought gifts for these kids, and we had a big Christmas party. It was wonderful because a lot of these kids had never even celebrated Christmas in the traditional sense. They celebrated the founder's birthday, but they didn't, celebrate Christmas per se. And so they were just thrilled with all of those gifts that everybody brought, and the decorations and all the kinds of things that the kids had the best time. And I felt that was love.
Yes, love for the community. It's great, Fran.
So we come here for community, right? We come here for fellowship. We come here to get to know each other. And then, have you guys heard of the theory of 6 degrees of separation? Yeah. So, like, for instance, you all know my wife, so that makes you one person away from knowing President Barack Obama, because my wife was on a detail. She got to meet the president, so you're one person. You're 2 people away from knowing President Biden, because one of Sarah's coworkers was the best man at President Biden's granddaughter's wedding.
No.
That was just 2 Saturdays ago.
Crazy.
Yes. So, but here's crazy. No, crazy. She talked about working at a children's reform school. Fran Bolt talked about working at a children's reform school in Oregon, which is God knows how many thousands of miles away from here. For 20 years, she worked with my aunt's husband. Yeah, like
that is crazy.
That's crazy. Like
Yeah.
how close. So if you sat here and started to think about it, there's a good possibility, Steve Davila, that you somehow, some way knew Steve Georgie before you knew Steve Georgie.
Oh,
So you're one person away from Oprah Winfrey.
yeah. Right, yeah. And when Jesus said that, for sure, that there's no greater love than someone who would lay down a life for a friend. Yeah, honestly, Fran, that's the kind of work you were doing at that reform school. So, Stuart, how do you define love?
I, well, actually, well, I'm glad you asked me this question this week instead of next week. Love, for me, has always been defined in the loss. And so I lost my mom when I was 4, and that loss brought a lot of pain in my life, like a lifetime of pain, just that one event. And because it just had a my dad made a bad decision, and then other bad decisions were made, and it just had a cascading series of events. But I guess when that definition of loss changed for me was so it is not uncommon for me to share outlandish ideas, crazy thoughts, or facts, real facts, and not be believed. So, for once, I shared with a friend of mine that 1 in 11 people own Hootie and the Blowfish's first album. And when I shared that with him, he was like, "You are nuts," but he didn't have his phone with him. And so after dinner, he went home and Googled it, and I was proved right. That 1 in 11 people, at one point in time, owned Hootie and the Blowfish. So I'm just getting to know Sarah and meet her, and I tell her that it's like an astounding fact, like 80% of people store their coffee wrong. I'm not kidding. 80% of people put their coffee either in the refrigerator and or in the freezer, not knowing that the whole purpose of a refrigerator is to not keep cold, it's to dehumidify first, and in removing the moisture out of the air, making it drier, it makes it easier to keep things cold, keep things frozen. So in the dehumidification, it sucks the moisture out of the coffee beans and makes your coffee go bad sooner. So it's not a great place to store your coffee. Hear me now, believe me later. But I shared this with Sarah. She jumps up out of her stool, runs over to her freezer, pulls her freshly purchased pound of coffee, and she tells me, "Where do I store this?" And I said, "In a cool, dark place." And she goes and puts it in the cabinet, and so it was in that doing of that.
Believing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm just telling you, 80% of people don't do that. So.
That's a beautiful story.
You know, we didn't have coffee right after dinner. I went to somebody's house just recently, a friend of mine who's sitting in the room, and he offered me a cup of coffee after dinner, and he made a point, like, here's a cup of decaf. And I was like, decaf is for quitters. And he was like, no, decaf is for those who want to go to sleep tonight. And not realizing I can drink a cup of coffee and 5 minutes later, like, be out.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I appreciate that definition. That's a great idea. One of the things that I think is really important is that we learn to give each other the benefit of the doubt. And she wasn't doubting you, but it's along that same line of, like, if you're hearing something for the first time, don't just completely dismiss it at first. Like, let it sit and see, like, maybe this person has something to share that I don't already know. So that's great. So we're coming up on our time to conclude. Any last thoughts about love? Any last stories? Yeah, Carol, come on up. The Reverend Carol Tuck. Yeah. Carter, did you have something or were you just stretching earlier? Okay. I didn't want to overlook you. Okay. Oh, and Vern. Okay, good.
You triggered, or no, wasn't you? You triggered a memory. And this is a memory from seeing this in the newspaper. And I don't remember what year it was. I know it was, had to be in the 90s. Those of you who remember the David Koresh business in Waco, Texas.
Yeah.
And of course, as we all looked at that in horror, what was happening and all of, mistakes and we should have done this, yada, yada, yada. But I remember seeing in the newspaper a picture of the children, whether they actually showed the children or not, but they showed this window, this stained glass window of Jesus the Good Shepherd, and it was in the Methodist Children's Home.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I Googled and everything. I finally called them and I said, do you know anything about that? Is that something you have in your archives? And poor woman, she thought, no. And I said, but where do you have such a window? She said, well, maybe in the chapel. And if any of you have been there and know what I'm talking about, but I remember how it was so arresting when I saw it. I think I'd probably just entered, ministry after seminary, and thinking all those little children and what they had just seen.
Yeah.
And there is the Good Shepherd.
Yeah.
That's the love of the United Methodist Church.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. The love of the United Methodist Church. Welcoming people in need. Yes, welcoming all. That's really good, Carol. Thank you.
So Vern Smith, you
Yeah.
have an idea?
Vern had something.
And then we'll close it out.
A couple of short ideas. One, I didn't want to forget, or us to forget, Paul's definitions of love in 1 Corinthians 13. Yes. And I think that's always very, very helpful to read that over and over when we're thinking about love. And is it real?
Wait, can you share that with us?
Not the whole thing.
Love is patient, right?
Patient and kind.
And kind. It doesn't boast. It doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Yeah, that's the idea.
Right.
Say it again. Yeah, it's
Not
not
jealous.
jealous. It's not provoked to anger. Yeah.
Doesn't insist on its own way.
Doesn't insist on its own way. That's good, Vern. Yes, thank you. Your second thought.
The second thought is just from a book that I read back when we were involved much in Stephen ministry. Yeah. And it says something like 90% of caring is just being there.
90% of caring is being there. Yeah.
Right.
Presence. Thank you, Vern. Yeah.
Vern and Margaret, we really appreciate week after week for you guys just being here. So you'll be our last one. Yeah, no, it's totally fine.
Please.
Please.
We'd like to hear from you.
My mother's been a member here for a few years, and
Yeah.
my daughter and I just moved here. We have felt such love from everyone in this church, coming up and saying hi and telling us about the teen group and just about so many opportunities. And it's meant so much to us. We came from a church in Texas that was very unwelcoming, but without intending to be. But
Sure.
very exclusive in a way, and you don't belong, or you do. And this church from day one has been, you are welcome to everything, wherever you are, whatever you need. And that has just meant the world to me and my daughter and my mother. So thank you for sharing the love, even when you don't maybe realize that you're doing that. It has been a huge impact on my family.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Amen to that. That's a great way to end the conversation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
So it's kind of crazy how it just kind of starts and then it
It
kind of
works
gets to the
out.
middle and then all of a sudden like poof.
There it is. Yeah.
It's like the well, you keep on saying over and over again. She says every week that Parables is the largest Sunday school class in Las Cruces.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here to say it's the fastest.
It's the
Sunday
fastest.
school It's a fast 30 minutes.
It is, and thank you for being willing to do it this way. We did plan this. This was intentional, and we're grateful. And we'll probably do this every so often because it's just good to give people an opportunity to talk. But next week the theme is joy, and we will have lots of it. So you're not going to want to miss next week. Thank you all for being here.
There's donuts and coffee in the gathering space. Go get one.
Church starts in 10 minutes.